Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Warren, and this is Me Reimagined, a space where we unlock the frozen parts of ourselves, the parts we hide from and hide from the world, so we can learn to believe we're enough. This is the 4th episode in an 8-chapter series on self-forgiveness and how that relates to feeling like you are not enough. In the last 3 chapters, we explored the coping strategies we use to protect ourselves. Blame, the magic formula, which is deny needs, armor up, feed the void, and the language that you use with yourself. Now, before we jump into chapter 4, I'd like to define what I mean by self-forgiveness. For me, self-forgiveness is an empathetic understanding of how you were and are trying to stay safe. When you forgive yourself, you admit that you haven't done anything wrong. You are forgiving yourself for using a lousy strategy that hurts yourself and others. You see that assigning blame doesn't apply because there's no one at fault. You were doing the best you could to protect yourself with the tools that you had in that moment. When you release the fault that you assigned yourself, that's when you can start owning your needs, desires, and actions because they're not bad. And when you own the needs and wants as normal and human, you don't have to armor up. You can let people see them because you know that they're valid and okay. You can stop feeling the void and searching for oblivion because you no longer have the pain of self-abandonment. And the language you use with yourself starts to reflect the empathy and compassion you feel for yourself. I wanted to touch on that because that's where we are going on this journey together. We are heading toward a place where we love ourselves. And if you think you already love yourself, reflect on whether you do any of the behaviors mentioned in the first 3 chapters. Do you speak poorly to yourself? Do you blame yourself, thinking that you should have been better or that you should have done something differently? Do you take apart your behavior in your head after the moment has passed? Do you stay silent when you want to speak up? Do you pretend that you're okay when you aren't? And do you try to please others at the expense of yourself? If you do any of those, then I'd argue that you are not loving yourself in those moments. For me, love is an action, not a feeling. You may not actively feel like you dislike yourself, but if you're not owning up to who you are, what you need, if you're not using your voice and speaking kindly to yourself 100% of the time, then self-forgiveness is needed. And when you think of a perfect love, the unconditional kind, it's not sporadic. It doesn't change with behavior or demand more than you have to give. It isn't unkind. You don't stop loving or shame a toddler because they didn't or couldn't do what you asked. The loving action is to create structure, offer grace and consistency. And if you don't treat yourself as a toddler in every moment, then you must believe that you're not doing your best, which, well, it inhibits you offering grace and it prompts all the unloving, fear-based behaviors that are supposed to motivate you. So we're going to take a closer look at that in chapter 4. Chapter 4, Crime and Punishment. The girl knew she was pretty. She'd had enough boyfriends. She knew she was sporty. She swam, played soccer, took dance classes, and had good balance. She knew she was smart, or smart enough to get promoted in her jobs. She knew she was capable. She'd gotten herself out of a few scrapes, lived on her own, knew how to change a tire. But even though she knew these things, it was as if she needed all of these things to make up for a deficiency that went bone deep. And if anyone thought her pretty or sporty or smart or capable, it was because they couldn't see that she was a defect. All of those, well, they hadn't helped her control or change her experience. So what was the point? Despite feeling lost and hopeless, the girl knew she had to keep being those things because if she didn't, people would stop being fooled, and they would see that those qualities were covering up a bottomless deficiency. It was as if she was missing a basic quality that she couldn't name, but one that somehow disqualified all of her other qualities. The girl knew she was unlovable, that she was somehow deficient, because if she wasn't deficient, then she would be able to control her experience. But she was 25 now, and her best still was not enough to control her experience. To be able to get what she needed, attention, connection, acceptance, she needed to be more. So she used shame, blame, and language to motivate herself into submission, into giving more when she didn't have it, into being more when she had already given 100%, into being more of what others wanted, into earning love through service, into shutting up if she didn't think about it, stopped sitting on the pity pot, stopped complaining, and focused on the power of positivity, then she would be able to control her experience. When those weren't enough to motivate her to keep going or to make her inner child submit and be silenced, well, she resorted to punishment. Well, that's how it was modeled for her, so that's what she did. When she hit 26, her fear of 30 ballooned. 30 was the age where she was supposed to have figured it out. The age she was supposed to be well down the milestone path of marriage, check. Career, check. Babies, check. Savings account, check. House, check. Nice car, check. She had checked a few of the boxes. Marriage, she was employed and promoted, she had a savings account, a car. But distantly, she could hear her inner child crying. All of the checks weren't adding up. Was this all there was? Wake up, work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., live a parallel but not connected life with your partner, work hard for those in power, to have babies to pass this empty legacy on to? She certainly didn't feel that she was approaching the American dream that was sold in the 80s and 90s commercials, with the Corvette that drove you into your dream as you slipped on your shades and let the wind ruffle your hair. No, she felt much more like Bridget Jones, blown sideways after losing her scarf on the convertible ride. Simultaneously, she found that she was deeply tired. It took a lot of energy to maintain the strategies that she had in place. It took a lot of energy just to make herself go in for a manicure and pedicure. She thought she was losing it. I mean, who complained about having to have a manicure and pedicure? She was dimly aware that something about it not feeling like a choice was driving her listlessness with her grooming and maintenance schedule. She also had the slight sense that the armor, those perfect gleaming nails, the new outfits, the coiffure, weren't bringing her closer to happiness, which confused her because that's what happened in the movies and on billboards. In general, she felt like her life wasn't working, though she could not, at this point, have given a reason why. It was less that she could explain it or express it than that she simply felt it in her bones. But she had a vague sense that she was doing something wrong. She had missed the path, or she was broken, and no kind of life would bring her satisfaction. Or she wasn't able to create the life that would bring her satisfaction. This sense gnawed at her, its teeth marks imprinted in many areas of her life. It drove her to eat. Eating, specifically donuts, was one of the things that induced oblivion, that reduced the magnitude of the fear. And she was tired of always managing what she ate. Like the manicure and pedicure, she had the sense that counting calories, exercising to burn specific caloric quantities, restricting intake to maintain a festive lifestyle that often included enough empty alcohol calories to match her ideal daily caloric intake, was not actually making the impact it was supposed to. The donut-filled intersection where have to and should met want to and would was a chocolate-filled bog of paralysis and procrastination. The girl's frustration with herself was growing. Her needs weren't going away. The bloody suitcases were getting heavier and more cumbersome, even as she did more of what she had to. She was doing what she should, so why wasn't it getting any easier? It was as if the longer she denied and ignored them, the louder and more stringently these needy exiles shouted, and behavior like that deserved punishment. She would get creative. Her self-language turned vicious. In her mind, stupid fucking idiot, useless bitch, whiner, worthless became common parlance. Now she used it at all times, when she was towing the line, as well as when she wasn't. She was consistent in the punishment that was delivered. She mocked all personal achievements and made comparisons with the 1%. Of course, she simply did the best she could with the magazines like Us Weekly, In Touch, Star, Glamour, Hello, and People, until Facebook and Instagram helped her exponentially increase her game. I mean, this was the art of punishment. Plus, they were free. Though she couldn't have pointed this out at the time, she withheld love and affection for herself, both because they made her soft and exacerbated her neediness. The pressure of arms around her and a hug made her tear up immediately, and there was no way she was crying in front of others. And also because she had actually started to loathe her inner child. It would not shut the fuck up. She felt she would be better off without it. She hadn't figured out how to silence the child for good, but she had devised a way to kick the child when she was down. Kicking her made her harder, more of a warrior. And by this time, life definitely felt like an arena. She would withhold comfort when her inner child most needed comfort. Like when she came home after a day of wearing her professional mask and took it off to let the rope of deep shame uncoil from her neck. Only the cats were there to witness her real response to her boss's question about if she paid her to be an idiot. In these moments, she wouldn't cry. She would apply as much pressure as needed to seal it in. The most effective trick was marshaling as many shameful moments as she could to encase the newest member of the shame portfolio. Glazing this memory in a thick layer of antecedent shame, like a Krispy Kreme donut, she'd apply pressure until the shame hardened into a full metal jacket, rendering her bulletproof from the inside out. She would run the magic formula in hyperdrive. She'd jeer, "You want comfort? Do something to deserve comfort. You don't need comfort. Only weak, sad, useless people need comfort, and you will not be weak. You want comfort? Stop being so selfish. You don't have it bad. Look at," and here she'd insert anyone or anything that was in pain. Comparison worked with both achievements and pain. And so, at the very moments that the girl needed tenderness or a hug or encouragement, she was most horrible to herself. She sought to control her experience by forcing herself to conform to what she ought to or should do. She also sought to control her experience by managing or changing her environment, the people, the places. After university, the girl moved 8 times in 5 years. But no matter how well she fit in, where she moved, or who she left behind, she couldn't outrun that sense of deficiency and the sense that her life wasn't working. The end of that chapter. So that chapter illustrates the 4th reason that you, like me, might need to forgive yourself. Perhaps in the moment you most needed warmth and encouragement, love and care, you abused yourself. Perhaps you were cold and hard when you needed to be held with understanding. The other side of self-forgiveness is so much softer than the hard, cold, fear-based techniques that we use to police our behavior. This softness shows up in small and large ways. Instead of calling yourself lazy, you admit that you need rest. You no longer feel pressure and shame if you don't know something, or if you hadn't anticipated something at work. You know you are working hard and you feel grateful that you work in a team that is quick and attentive. Rather than berating yourself or yelling at your child, you give yourself a hug because you know that's not the relationship you want with your child, so you'll keep trying. Because you no longer attach your self-worth to the satisfaction of others, you're able to say no when you need to because you know that's what's best for everyone. You no longer spend days ruminating on an interaction where someone was mad at you because you know there's no fault. There's only conflicting expectations and miscommunication, both of which were co-created and can be repaired. Now is when we turn the lens to you. My question for you is, in the moments that you have a need, are you hard and cold? Do you punish yourself? Do you use fear to motivate yourself? Do you forbid yourself from expressing emotion? Maybe crying is a no-go. But how well is this working for you? I mean, maybe it works in that it keeps everyone else blind to your internal struggle. But does it actually work? Does it ever help you get your needs met? Does it ever feel good? Maybe it helps you toe the line, but does it make you feel fulfilled, satisfied, or seen when you do that? Listen, I have a secret for you. You don't need to be different. You don't need to be more of anything. You are enough. You are not broken. You are whole and valuable just as you are. Your worth exists independent of whether you can see it or not. I well know the feeling of not being able to see it. And that feeling is what is driving the lousy strategy choices. My hope is that now you see they don't work. These strategies of blame and punishment, they don't get your needs met. In fact, they get you further away from what you want in the first place. I wanted connection and acceptance of my authentic self, but the bulletproof shame armor I created didn't allow any connection or acceptance of my authentic self because no one ever saw her. So where you can accept that you have not treated and are not treating yourself well, that those lousy strategies don't work, that is where you begin to thaw the frozen parts through self-forgiveness and gentleness. One of the key ways to use gentleness to begin the thaw is through self-compassion. When I first heard that, I shuddered. I wanted a neat, emotionless 12-step program that I could follow. Who wants a messy internal program of kindness? Ugh. Kristin Neff is the queen of self-compassion, both in research and in practice. She identifies 3 parts to the art of self-compassion. I'll put a link to Dr. Neff's work in the show notes. So the first part in the art of self-compassion is the one that's most straightforward. Drop the judgment and be kind to yourself. Instead of "I'm an idiot," you practice saying, "I wish I'd seen that sooner," or "I wish I felt more confident." No, you shouldn't have been better, been more of, been less of. You should be exactly what you are, so stop the bad-mouthing and pick up a few kind phrases that you can use to, I guess, fake it until you make it. Even if you don't believe it in the beginning, eventually, with practice, kindness will become familiar, habitual. Over time, without the bad-mouthing, your view of yourself will improve. Another way to say it is to give yourself comfort when you need it. Don't take a cold, stiff upper lip approach. Give yourself a hug. Reassure yourself the way that you would a small child. It will be okay. So the second part to the art of self-compassion is recognizing that you're part of a community. There isn't anyone anywhere who hasn't, at one time or another, wished that they were better, smarter, prettier, more capable. You name it. Gold medalists, PhDs, CEOs, models, Donald Trump. They all have this feeling in common. You are part of a global community. So banish the thought that you alone are struggling with this. Often, the less it looks on Instagram like someone struggles with it, the more likely it is that they are. In fact, I think we ought to have a hashtag to bring light to the magnitude of this problem, kind of like Me Too did for sexual abuse. So, the third and the last part in the art of self compassion is using binoculars on your life instead of a magnifying glass. When we feel not enough, we want to hunt out our flaws. You know you have those magnifying mirrors, and you spend way too much time hunting blackheads, stray hairs, and just noting flaws that need to be covered up. Well, that's what we do with our lives when we have this feeling. We hunt down so many instances of not enough that we lose the connection with the present moment. And it's not that you feel incapable in this moment. It's not that the event left you feeling unlovable. It's that you, yourself, your whole life are suddenly incapable and unlovable. So you must use the binoculars to see the whole of you, not just the tip of your nose. Remember, this is one moment, one event, one part of a very multifaceted you. Now, when you practice the art of self-compassion regularly, you get to self-forgiveness. And on the other side of self-forgiveness is a space of abundance and balance and love. If together we all learn to come to the table from this space, what we create together results in a very different outcome than if we start creating wearing armor, full of shame, fearful of judgment, denying our humanity. I really enjoyed creating this podcast. Who knew I could find joy in not enoughness? I am so grateful for you for being here with me today listening. I feel hopeful that soon we'll all need to recycle our armor. I feel thankful for the practice I get to do every day because I know it makes me stronger and I know I'm not alone. Today, I feel particularly thankful that I have only had one meeting, so I've spent much of this rainy day in sweatpants and fluffy socks. I feel thankful as I sink my teeth into the fresh bread that my partner baked. I'd love to hear what you feel thankful for today. Join the Me Reimagine Facebook community group. Tell us what you feel grateful for. Tell us where your struggles are. Let us hold space for you and mirror back how amazing you are. If you found this episode interesting or useful, subscribe to hear the other episodes on self-forgiveness. You can find all episodes of Me Reimagined on meganwarrencoaching.com. And if you leave a voice note or a comment, I'll reply. With love, until next time.
You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone.